Okay, good morning everybody to today's session on problem solving and expertise. And I'm sorry about these shadows from these theater lamps here. They haven't been there last week, so I don't know what they did in between. Okay, so topic for today, and as I already mentioned last week, we will now cover two topics each week. And today they are related somewhat. First will be problem solving, and this will be most of the lecture, and then we will speak somewhat about expertise. And okay, and we will have mainly some theories of problem solving we'll discuss. Okay, let's start with an introduction into problem solving. So the first question is, again, a question of definition. What is a problem after all, if you want to investigate that scientifically? Because not everything, of course, is a problem. And usually a definition of a problem is that you are in a current state or situation, which is also called the start state, and your goal is to be in a somewhat different state, your goal state. And what makes it a problem is that it is not obvious to you how to get from the start to the goal state. So that is a very universal description of what a problem is. So as an example, if you're stranded on a desert island, finding food, providing shelter, things like that, this usually poses problems, as we know from many books and movies. So to delineate that a little bit better, let's have a look at what is not a problem usually. So, and that is when it's obvious to you how to reach the goal. So if you're hungry and you're home, then usually you just have to go to the fridge or to the cupboard in the kitchen and you will find something to eat. And I know as a student sometimes all that stuff is empty, then still you have the option to go to a fast food shop around the corner or something. So that's not really a problem in that way. However, problems are subjective. They are different for different people. So what's obvious to you might pose a problem for other people. So for instance, for children, and that's usually a very exhausting state for parents once children discover how to open the fridge and help themselves to the nice, sweet things which are in there. Or there are occasional dog owners who suffer from their dogs having learned how to open the fridge and help themselves. So for like children and dogs, initially that is a problem. So they know there is some food in there, but they don't know how to get there, but they learn it at some point. Problems can be subdivided or described by some characteristics. And the first one is when we look at how well our start state, goal state, and the strategies to get from start to goal are defined, then we can see that we have well-defined problems. That means everything here is well described and well defined. Or we have ill-defined problems. That means it is unclear at least one of these things. We will see examples in a moment and go through that. Independent of that, another level or characteristic we can look at is how much knowledge is required to solve the problem, background knowledge. And we have problems which are called knowledge lean. That means basically everybody can solve them because all we need to know is posed in the problem state itself. Or knowledge rich problems where we may need expert knowledge to solve them. Okay, let's have a look at a couple of examples of these types of problems. So, as I said, well-defined problems are problems where basically all aspects of the problem are clearly specified. So, the start state, the goal state, and the strategies or the range of possible moves to reach the goal. And an example is find your way out of a maze. You know where you start, or at the center, for instance, and you know the moves you can walk around, and your goal is clearly find the exit of the maze. Another example is playing chess. The goal state is clearly defined. The opponent must be brought to a state of checkmate, and all the moves of all the figures are defined, and the start state, you always start with the same setting. This shows that even well-defined problems may be extremely difficult problems, like chess or something like that. It doesn't mean that it's easy problems. It just means everything is clearly defined. Another example, or an example of ill-defined problems where the problem is under-specified, is, for instance, when you locked in your keys, the keys in your car. So anything of that or all of that might be unclear. Start state, goal state, and the strategies of that. So when your keys are locked in the car and you have an urgent appointment, there's not a very clear solution and not very clear strategies to you. So you may ask for help, however, it may take too long if you have an urgent appointment. You can try it yourself and break into your own car. It potentially costs time and you may fail in the end. Or you might just smash your window, which incurs cost. Of course, you have further options. You may ask friends to drive you. You may use public transport or things like that. So it's clear that it's not that easy, and the strategies available to you may be different to other people. So if you're in a foreign city for a job interview or something, you don't have friends around maybe to call or something. Other examples of ill-defined problems are basically most everyday problems. They're usually ill-defined. So, for instance, if you have to write an essay, that's usually ill-defined. So there's no one clear strategy you have to follow to find a solution, or you have to obey to get an A star or something. The goal state is not clear because there are many different ways to write an essay to get a good grade. Being punctual on a date because you have to face problems which are out of your control, for instance. Is public transport on time? When do you have to leave and schedule things like that? Or how do you get from A to B on a tube strike day? Things like that, which are like everyday problems, are usually ill-defined problems. Okay, so this was the distinction between well-defined and ill-defined, and we said we have a second characteristic, and this is the amount of knowledge we need to solve a problem. And there are knowledge-rich problems which we can only solve when we really have some specific knowledge for the problem. And we will see in our second part of the lecture that the studies in expertise often use knowledge-rich problems. So when we have experts, something like that. And an example would be that you have to find a fault and repair an electronic device. You need background knowledge, how to use soldering equipment, how to measure these electronic chips and things like that. So that can't be done by a lay person. Knowledge-lean problems are problems where we don't need specific knowledge, and basically all or most of the information we need is given in the problem statement. And again, we have the example, find your way out of the maze. That is self-explanatory. You don't need to be an expert in maze escaping or something like that to do that. Okay, so the well and ill-defined characteristic and the knowledge and knowledge-lean problems, they're independent of each other. So we have all combinations. We have well-defined problems which are knowledge-rich and which are knowledge-lean, and we have ill-defined problems which are knowledge-rich and knowledge-lean. So this is independent from each other. And when we look at the research which has been done in psychology on problem solving, we will see that mostly researchers use well-defined problems which are knowledge-lean. And there's a very simple pragmatic reason to that, and that is that it usually can be performed by everybody, so you don't have to be very selective about your participants. you have an optimal strategy for their solution. So when you think, for instance, of chess or some other logical puzzles, there is an objective best way to solve the problem. And then you can evaluate objectively how the participant performed. For instance, you could say, okay, starting from that chess position, the optimal way would be 8 moves to result in checkmate. However, this person needed 15 moves or something. And so you have a good measure of that. And you have an objectively right answer for that. So yeah, that's what I said. Errors can be easily assessed, and the strategies, what participants do, can more easily investigated. Okay, any questions regarding this introduction? Okay, so let's have a look at a couple of theories of problem solving. And you see, we will have quite a few, 5 theories we go through, and we start with behaviorism. And if you remember back, behaviorism started at the late 1890s, early 1900, and it was this idea of that we are not looking really at what happens in our head, in our mind, but we only have the situation, the stimulus, and we have a response, and everything in between is a black box. So that was the behaviorist approach, basically. And there was a notable behaviorist, Edward Thorndike, who looked at problem solving in animals. And his research, or what he did, was that he had hungry cats and he placed them in such a box, which is also called Thorndike's puzzle box. And there was a mechanism, there was food outside, placed outside of the box, and the cat could see that. And there was a mechanism that when a certain lever is pulled or pushed, that a door would open and the cat could get to the food. And the typical behavior of animals is that they just show random behavior. They may walk around here, jump a little bit, scratch and sniff, and things like that. And then by chance, at some point, they will pull the lever and get out. And then, slowly, when you put them again back in the box when they are hungry, and so the same box, they will learn how to solve that problem. And what may be very obvious to humans, so, oh, there's a lever, just push that, takes quite a while for animals. So this is an example learning curve from a cat. Here you see the number of trials, and here how many seconds it took to escape from the box. And 600 seconds are 10 minutes. And you see that even after 20 trials, it took again 10 minutes for the cat to get out. Only after 40 trials, it's down to like 2 minutes. So even after 40 successful escapes, the cat hasn't learned in a way that you put it in and it would directly press the lever or something. So this type of learning is very, very slow. And this type of learning is basically trial and error learning. And that's the behaviorist approach, so to say, to that. And trial and error learning, as in the example of the cat, is characterized by a few features. And that is that you basically, what you do is that you have repeated and varied attempts. And this transfers also to human trial and error learning. When you do that approach, you just try it again and again and again, and you always try to change slightly your approach. It's an unsystematic method. I mean, there may be some system if you want to fit something into something else that you try to vary the angle or something, but generally it's an unsystematic method, and it's usually used, or you don't require any insight into the problem or the theory, or you don't use any organized method like in the cat. It's just wandering around in this cage randomly. So the advantage is you don't need any specific knowledge, and you don't need to understand the problem at all. You could just try your best to solve it. And therefore, trial and error learning is often used by animals as well as children. If you have these toys for very young children where you have to fit a shape through another hole, or here fill in the puzzle, you will see they will just grab and just try where it works. And it may take them quite a while until they really learn which shape goes into which hole. The disadvantages are that it's very tedious, time-consuming, monotonous. So it takes quite a while. In addition, it's potentially risky, because if you have no idea about what you're doing actually, and you are working with something which might involve danger, like repairing an electric device, and if you have no understanding of electricity, you may actually not remove it from the power so that it's still plugged in, then this can actually be dangerous. So in adults, it's often a last resort. And of course, it doesn't really work for very complex problems. So you can't write an essay by trial and error of just setting a random number of words to each other. Okay, that's already everything I want to say about the more behaviorist approach. So it's really the idea of, again, this fundamental behaviorist approach of, okay, we just create the context, the situation, the stimulus, and then we look at the output, and all in between doesn't interest us. Now, Gestalt Psychology, we have discovered that in our lecture on perception. And what we've seen is, or the basic idea in Gestalt Psychology and perception was this concept of that the whole is different or more than the sum of its parts. So that, for instance, when something of the shape is missing, we fill that up and we still identify that as a G, for instance. And this basic principle or way of thinking has been applied to problem solving as well. One of the early persons in the Gestalt tradition working on problem solving was Wolfgang Cunha, and I think he worked on the Canary Islands or something with chimpanzees. And he posed problems to them, like basically Thorndike did, but different types of problems. So what he did, he placed food somewhere in the cage of the chimpanzees, which they could only reach if they used tools. And they actually had to do something first to create their tools. So for instance, it was placed somewhat outside the cage, and there were two sticks. And both sticks were too short to reach the food. However, you could stick them together to make one long stick, and then you could get to the food. Or another example is that it was hanging so high that they needed to stack a couple of boxes to get up there. So this is another example where the monkey really stacks quite a few, I hope he doesn't fall down there, quite a few boxes to get to the food. And Köhler often observed a specific type of behavior in the monkeys. And that would be that the monkey would initially try but fail. So for instance, try to get the food with one stick, it doesn't work, throw it away, take another stick, it doesn't work again. And then he's frustrated, of course, because there's food, he can't reach it. So he might go into the corner of a cage and sit there, frustrated, silently. And seemingly he's doing nothing, just sitting there, frustrated. However, he observed that sometimes, suddenly, the monkey jumps up, rushes to the sticks, directly puts them together and retrieves the food. So there came up the idea, while the monkey was seemingly doing nothing, sitting there, that he may actually do something with respect to the problem. And this state is called incubation. So sometimes it helps to step back, have a break from the direct active problem-seeking behavior and incubate on the problem, and then you have kind of an insight experience, or like an aha effect, where you say, I could do it like that. And that seems to be even present in animals, as Köhler observed. Or another word for that is illumination. So, as I said, Gestalt psychology stated that the whole is different from the sum of its parts. So, not only in perception, but also in problem solving. And the example is the realization that two sticks separately, when put together, create a new thing. So, it's a change in representation, or it's also called mental restructuring. And that's the same thing basically as in perception. We have the individual elements of a shape. However, we can combine that to create something new. Here we would have just funny shaped arcs, but we can combine that to the letter G. And the same is in the problem space. We have two individual sticks and we can combine them to a long stick. Or we have individual boxes and we can combine them to a stack that high, then we can climb on that and reach the fruit. And this mental restructuring or the creation of a new representation is often connected or accompanied with an aha experience. Another example for where we need such a mental restructuring for a new representation is the two-string problem. And this is now a problem which is used in human participants. And here the task is as follows. So participant is in a room. And in a room there are two strings hanging from the ceiling, and you have some additional tools lying around. Now the task is, please tie the two strings together and make a knot in them. However, the problem is the strings are so far apart that when you hold one string, you can't reach the other one. If you would have both in your hands, they would be long enough to be tied together. So how do you get to the other string? Are you able to tie them together? And the solution is that you take one of the tools, tie it to one of the strings, and swing it. And then you grasp the other one, and when it swings back, you can grasp it and take it. However, this is a quite challenging problem for participants. And the reason for this is that usually participants associate the things which lie around with their usual function, like a hammer. They don't consider that tool, which has a specific function, as a weight. So as a different thing or for use in a different purpose. So to solve the problem, what you need to do is to change the representation from a hammer to a weight, for instance. And that poses problems to people. The experimenter sometimes can try to induce the solution, for instance, by brushing the strings so that it starts to swing slightly, so to give participants a hint. And this is called functional fixedness. And that means we have the tendency to consider only the usual function of objects. We have problems to think beyond what could we use the object for other things. And Karl Duncker did quite a bit of research on this functional fixedness. A more elaborate study to show functional fixedness was done by Birch and Rabinowitz. And they did the following. They had two independent groups. And they had to create or complete an electric circuit by using either a switch or a relay. So two different electronic devices. And there's, at this point, nothing specific about that task. This is just the preparation phase, so to say. And then they faced the same participants who did first this task had to solve the two-string problem. And they had a number of objects which they could use as weight, including switches and relays. Now, the interesting finding was that the two groups chose different devices to swing. The group who used the switch to repair or to complete the electric circuit was more fixed on that a switch is really a switch, so they picked the relay to swing more often. The group which used the relay for completing the circuit more often used the switch for swinging. So by using the item in its usual purpose increased the functional fixedness for that item, so that it was harder for them to see a new function of that. Mm-hmm. This two-string problem. So you can solve that only if you tie something to that string and then you bring it to swinging, so that it comes over to you and you can grasp it and then you can tie it together. And they had the same thing here. Okay? Okay, to summarize, the idea of the Gestalt approach to problem solving is, and there was quite a contribution of Gestalt psychology in that they discovered basically, were the first ones to describe that when we solve problems, it's quite often very important to change the representation of the elements of the problem. They first described this existence of insight or illumination, aha experience, not only in humans but also in animals. However, as with perception, the same criticism holds for problem solving in Gestalt psychology, that they did not specify the exact mental mechanisms of phenomena of restructuring and insight. So what happens mentally? They didn't provide explanations and cognitive mechanisms. I mean, to be fair, it was in the 1940s, so generally cognitive psychology was not very advanced, but still, it's a problem. Okay. So we go next to representational change theory, which is a more modern theory, but directly builds upon the ideas of Gestalt psychology, but offers more explanations to that. Okay, so it's Stellan Olsen who has proposed this theory, and it's based on the same terminology as the Gestalt psychologists. However, as I said, it provides better mechanisms or descriptions, what mechanisms are involved in insight. And he proposed two main processes. First is that the internal representation of the problem may need to be changed. And the second one is that so-called constraints need to be relaxed. And we will see examples now in a moment. Okay, so the internal representation of a problem. And to illustrate that, how you can go about to solve problems by changing the representation, let's have a look at an example. And this is called the mutilated checkerboard problem. And it looks like as follows. So you have a typical chess checkerboard, which has 8 by 8, that means 64 squares, 32 blacks, 32 whites. And now you remove the opposite corner squares. And now you give a participant 31 of these domino things, and you ask them whether you can cover with 31 of them the whole board. There are 64 originally, and you take 2 away, so there are 62 squares left. You get 31 dominoes, each covering 2 squares, so you can cover 62 squares. So is it possible or not? Now, if you pose that problem to participants, what you will do, or most participants do, is they just try. So you fill that up in some way, and so forth and so forth, and you do that, and then you may come to a situation where you see, okay, I can't go forward. If I put the next one covering these two fields, I can't cover that anymore. If I put one here to cover these two, I can't cover that anymore. So you may go back, try again, go back, try again, until you realize you can't solve that just by trying out, because there are easily 1 million ways to lay the domino pieces on that board. So to solve the problem, you need to restructure. You need a new representation of the problem, because that is too complicated. And the representation changes by more elaborate thinking about that. So when you try to think about it differently, on a different representation, you could start with counting the number of white and black squares. When you look at that example, we have originally 64 squares. 32 are black, 32 are white. Now what we are doing when we take away the opposite corners is we take away 2 white squares. So we are left with 30 white and 32 black squares. However, the domino pieces can cover always only 1 black and 1 white square. You can never cover 2 blacks with 1 domino piece. So when you have 31 dominoes, you will always be able to cover only 31 white and 31 black squares, which are 62. The board, as I said, you take away 2 white squares, so you have left 30 white squares and 32 black squares. So when you change the representation to that, you see there can't be a solution to the problem. Another way of changing the representation, so this is one way, would be to reduce the problem, make it simpler, by creating a 2x2 checkerboard. And then thinking about the same problem. And then it becomes immediately evident that you can't do it. So, as we said, representational change theory provides more elaborate mechanisms which explain the processes involved in insight. And the first one we have just seen, we have to change the internal representation of the problem. The second one is constraints relaxation. And again, we will see that as with an example, the 9-dot problem. So you could try for yourself, get a sheet of paper and a pen, just make evenly spaced 9 dots like that, and try to connect all the dots by using 4 continuous straight lines without lifting the pencil. So it's not allowed to say 1, 2, 3, okay, I managed with 3 lines or something. Just try for yourself, and if you found the solution, don't tell your neighbors so that they can try as well. Most people find that really a tricky task, a very challenging task. And you may try like that. So this, okay, 2 dots not connected. You may try like that. Again, 2 dots not connected. That's the usual type of way people try to solve that. Okay. Why is it a problem to solve the task? And the problem lies in there that according to Gestalt psychology, we automatically see a kind of a square here. And most people automatically assume that we have to stay within the square when we connect the dots. This was never specified. It was never posed as a constraint that we can't go outside the square. And that makes it so different, because to solve the problem, you actually have to go outside the square. And then you can use just 4 lines to do that. And this is an example where we need to relax the constraints which we just posed upon ourselves without any need to solve the problem. Once we did that, we can solve the problem. Okay. Let's have another example. You may know these matchstick problems. So you can try again for yourself, and if you know it, don't tell others. Produce a correct equation by moving 1 matchstick only. Again, a lot of people find that very challenging. I'll give you a hint which points to that you can relax probably a constraint which a lot of people automatically do. So again, that's an example. Most people try to work just with the numbers and just don't think about that they can change these matchsticks, the equals and the minus sign as well. And this constraint has never been mentioned or anything, we just impose it by ourselves. And only when we relax that, then we just see, okay, 4 minus 3 equals 1. We can solve that puzzle. Okay, so to summarize representational change theory, it's basically based on the Gestalt principles, but it offers a somewhat more detailed explanation how this insight can be achieved. And that is by changing the problem representation and by relaxing the constraints. The limitations are that it's still somewhat unspecified when the representation changes or in what way the representation changes. So it only specifies you need to change it, but how do you get to that change is unclear. And the second thing is that in this theory, a lot of other factors which affect problem finding or solution finding in insight are not considered, like this incubation we have seen in the monkeys, where you just need to go away from the problem a little bit and then suddenly you get this aha experience or insight or this new idea. Okay, let's have a little break and then we go on to the second part. Okay. Okay, let's go on. 2 more theories of problem solving. Next one is the information processing approach, and that's a very, as usual, the name already suggests, very well specified theory. And it was one of the key proponents were Herbert Simon and L. Newell. And their idea was that in everyday life, that most problems we have actually do not involve the element of insight. So everyday things. So if you have a date and the car does not start, you don't retreat to your room and incubate and then suddenly say, I could call a friend or something like that. Usually you have a different approach to solve the problems. Okay, so you may try different solutions which immediately come to you and which don't involve insight. So the question is, what strategies are used for these type of problems? And the idea of Simon and Newell was that we actually do kind of a search through what is called a problem space. And we will see an example of that for a moment. And the problem space contains all possible states of a problem. So it can be very, very large. So in chess, for instance, the problem space may involve all possible chess positions, all conceivable ones. So in this more formalized information processing approach, it offers the advantage that we have an objective measure of optimal solutions. So we have the initial state, and this is a starting state and all the information we have at the beginning, and we have the goal state, so the desired state, the end state, the solution of that. And then we have what is called operators, and the operators are the set of operations we are allowed to perform. And they mainly worked with these type of formal problems such as chess. So the operators would be the different type of moves the figures can do in chess. So this is another example of such a formalized approach, the Tower of Hanoi. And I'm sure you know that. So you have this thing where you have like 3 pegs and you have discs of different sizes here. So this is your initial state. And your goal state is that you have to bring the discs over to another peg. However, you have a couple of rules of operators working to solve the problem. The first one is that you only are allowed to move 1 disc at a time. Second one is you can only move a disc when there are no other discs on it, so only the top discs of a pile. And the third one is you're not allowed to put a larger disc on a smaller disc. So the one on the top must always be smaller than the one below. Now with that set of rules and initial state and goal state, we can define the problem space and describe that. And this is the complete problem space for the Tower of Hanoi problem when we only have 2 discs. When we have 3 and 4 discs, it becomes increasingly more complex. So we have this as a start state, and we have these 2 potential goal states so that the discs are on the second or on the third peg. And we could go here and put the smallest disc on the third peg, for instance, or on the second peg. So we branch out here. And then we could put the larger disc on here, and what we could do then here, which doesn't make sense to reach our goal, but it's still a potential move, we could put the smaller disc back on this one first. But it doesn't bring us closer to our goal to put it on the middle peg, for instance. And it's always reciprocal. We could go back here to go to that state. It doesn't bring us closer to our goal, but it's possible. So that's an example. And if you want to have like an objective criterion on the performance, you could just count what is the minimum number of moves to get from here to here. This is 1, 2, 3 moves. And then you could measure how many moves did the participants take to get there actually. So you have a nice objective measure, and you can easily extract the strategies used by participants. Now, Newell and Simon proposed that to solve the problem, we search through that problem space. So, as I said, we have, like seen on the graph, all possible states. However, this can be easily implemented, or not easily. implemented in computer programs. As you may know, that even nowadays computers are not powerful enough to create the full problem space of chess, for instance. That's the reason why it took so many years to actually build computer programs which are able to defeat chess masters, and they're still like on the tie level. And one reason for that is because it is sometimes so large that even computers can't do that. However, if you think about our human short-term memory, 7 items plus minus 2, then you can see how limited we are in that. So often it is absolutely impossible for us to first generate the whole problem space in mind and then search for the optimal solution and path through it. So, how else can we find a solution then? And one approach to that, or explanation or solution here, is that people use heuristics instead of this very formal search through problem space. And heuristics often can also be explained in that framework of having a problem space, and then just not creating the whole problem space, but only a subset of the problem space, for instance, to go forward. So what is a heuristic in these formal terms? It is basically a strategy which people apply, which is not very demanding cognitively, which we can still cope with our limited working memory, however, which still often produces a solution to a problem. It's not necessarily the optimal solution, but I mean often we don't need the optimal solution. Often it is fine we have a solution at all. You may also say it's a rule of thumb thing, a heuristic. Examples are trial and error. That's a heuristic as well. We just try and see whether we find something. Another heuristic we will speak in a bit more detail is called hill climbing. Very simple and straightforward as well. And these heuristics usually don't require a real understanding of the underlying problem. So what's, as an example of a heuristic, the hill climbing heuristic, proposed by Newell Simon as well. So the heuristic is, if in doubt or you don't know the solution, choose a move which brings you closer to your goal. So instead of further away. So if you aim for the peak, you should walk uphill and not downhill. It's very likely that this brings you closer to your goal. However, there's an inherent problem in that, a limitation. Sometimes we have to make moves which lead us further away, at least temporarily, from our goal to solve the problem. So it's not very easy, good to see here with the lightning, I guess, but even if you want to reach the peak, there are periods where you have to walk a little bit downhill to reach the peak. So if you are totally strict in adhering to the strategy, you will end here and not here. So you didn't find the perfect solution. However, even if it's not perfect, by following this hill climbing solution, you're not ending in the valley. So you reached an acceptable, potentially acceptable goal. You're not completely wrong, usually. Okay, so to summarize the information processing approach, generally it works well for well-defined problems, like Tower of Hanoi task, where you can describe everything so good. We have seen the problem space representation allows for an objective measure, and it actually resulted in quite successful computer models. And one by Simon and Newell is called the General Problem Solver, the GPS. Limitations are that, as we have seen, most everyday problems are ill-defined. So the transfer of this approach to everyday solutions is limited. And it doesn't perform well on these type of insight problems, as Köhler used that, for instance. Okay, let's get to the last point, theory of problem solving, analogical problem solving. Okay, so in theory, if we have solved a problem in everyday life, then optimally we should have learned something by that. So that in the future, when we face the same problem, we should solve it more quickly, or maybe straightforward. However, we would expect that also we have some transfer to related or similar problems. And this is the domain or the area of analogical problem solving. You solve one problem and then you are posed a problem which is somewhat different but shares some similarities. How good are we at that transfer? And research has shown that making such analogies actually very, very hard. People find it difficult and usually don't do that. Okay, so to give you an example, there is something, a puzzle or a problem which is called the fortress problem. And I'll read that. So a general has to capture a fortress. There are numerous roads which lead to the fortress. However, each of them contains mines, and the type of mines prevented that you send just the whole army on a road there, because that would set off the mines. So, however, if you want to win and overpower the enemy, the entire army must attack the fortress at the same time. So how could you organize the attack? So one solution, or the solution to that, is that you spread the army and smaller units come via all available roads. And because there are smaller units, they won't set off these mines. So you could attack with full power and do that. And people find that solution moderately difficult, that task. Okay. Consider another example posed by Karl Duncker again. And he had the following problem, which is actually a real-life problem. And suppose you have a tumor and you need to treat that tumor. You can't operate really. However, you can direct a ray towards it. Like, how's it called in English? I don't know, radiation therapy or something. However, if you make the ray so strong that it kills a tumor, then it kills all other tissue as well. If you make it so weak that the surrounding tissue is not damaged, then it doesn't harm the tumor. So how could you solve that problem? Any ideas? I didn't get that, sorry.
You just use the strong ray a little bit, so that it just weakens the tumor, and then use the one that doesn't damage the tissue to finish off the tumor.
So you would have two rays, or? No, it's only basically a machine where you could say the strength of the ray. So if it's strong enough to damage the tumor, it will also damage the surrounding tissue, and if you have a soft ray, then it won't damage the tumor. Okay, the solution to that would be you spread the rays so that you, for instance, have a couple of sources and they all meet at the point of the tumor. So that at the point where they converge, they have the full power, but the surrounding tissue only gets the radiation of a single ray. So maybe that's along the lines what you meant. And the point is that it has been tried in research to pose these two questions, the fortress and the Dunker's problem, one after the other, because they are actually analogical. So in the fortress problem, what you do is you spread the army to attack at the same time, and you do something like the same for the radiation. You create different ways, and they all meet at one point, so you can damage the tumor. On each way in, you don't damage the tissue, but where they all meet, it becomes so intense that you can remove the tumor. And that's actually how radiation therapy works in people. However, people usually do not see this analogy between the two puzzles. I mean, some of you may have read the textbooks where all this is proposed. So the tumor problem, without any help, only 10% of the participants solve that problem. When people are given the fortress problem first, it somewhat increases to 30%. But this is still not a very large number. 70% still are not able to solve the problem. So the reason for that is probably that the two problems do not share any surface similarities. It's not directly evident that they share similarities. They only have the same deep structure, and that's very difficult to extract and make the analogies for. However, when you tell the participants that the fortress story is relevant for the other story, so you point out there is an analogy, then nearly all find the correct solution for the tumor problem. So in principle, it is possible to draw the analogy for people, but we don't do it naturally. So to summarize that, there's a lot of research on determining which factors let you find analogies, make it hard, make it less hard, and things like that. So people have tried to figure out the importance of the superficial similarity, the structural, procedural similarities, and lots of things. We won't go into details of that. There are some limitations of that research in general, and that is that, first of all, the analogies posed to the students are often in very close temporal proximity, which we don't have in everyday life. Often it may be a year or two until we find or face the second problem which shares some similarity to another problem which we solved a year ago or something. And the analogies are often superficial, and in real life they're often more comparable on the deep structure. And there seems to be that there's quite a bit of inter-individual differences in the ability of people to draw analogies. So some people are very good at this, and some people are not. And there's not much research so far into the source of these inter-individual differences. Okay, so to summarize the whole aspect on the theories of problem solving, we have seen that in behaviorism, they followed a trial and error approach. That's what they explain, how problem solving works. It's basically learning by reinforcement. Gestalt Psychology stated that, or is based on this idea that the whole is different from the sum of its parts, and it introduced this concept of insight, illumination, aha experience, and noted first that we need a change of representation. That idea was picked up by Representational Change Theory, and which tries to explain the processes involved in insight in a bit more detail, and we have seen this change of representation and constraints relaxation. Then the information processing approach is basically for these non-insight problems, for well-defined problems, and it's a very formal thing which usually works best for these type of puzzles like Tower of Hanoi. And finally, we've spoken about analogical problem solving, where we have seen the difficulties in transferring previous solutions to new problems. Okay, do you have any questions on these theories of problem solving? Okay, then we go to expertise, and this part will be quite a bit shorter than the other part, so it's not 50-50. Okay, in expertise, we are looking at a skill or at knowledge in a particular area. So an expert is a person which has a very good and extensive knowledge or ability in something. And experts usually face very, very challenging tasks. So there are like expert problem solvers in their domain. And we know that, for instance, from expert chess players, the difficulty in finding really the right path or solution among millions and billions of options you have here. And they're so good, they can play like 10, 20 games in parallel. You probably have seen that, where you have a large room and they just go around, look at a board, make their next move, go to the next game, do their move until they circle around and come back and still win most of the matches. Then we have like excellence in sports. When you think about the difficulties in playing tennis on a professional level, so when professionals do serve a ball, the initial serve, they may have speeds of over 150 miles per hour. This is 240 kilometers per hour. Given that the court is that small, that means you have less than half a second between the serve and when the ball is at the other side of the court. And in that time, the player needs to determine where is the ball going, to which side will I go, do we have to move forward, backward, do we move a forward swing, backward swing, backward swing. So it's extremely challenging task. So to make clear what's the difference between problem solving and expertise, in problem solving we look at more generic problems and we focus on heuristics that are flexible and can be applied in loads of tasks. So it's more the everyday nature of things where we encounter a problem once or twice and have to find a solution. However, these heuristics are only of very limited use when we go to more complex domains like playing chess or playing tennis. And in expertise, we look at this problem-solving ability, so to say, or knowledge in one very specific domain. So how do we solve that? In a task which is always the same, always recurring. In tennis or in chess, when we look at these definitions like goal state, start state, and operators, they are always the same, but nevertheless, it poses a new problem all the time. So in expertise, it has been found that the experience in that domain where you are an expert in is a key element. There's a distinction which so far I haven't made clear. You can speak about cognitive expertise, and example would be chess or memory masters or things like that, and perceptual-motor expertise, like tennis or sports, but also music performance, professional musicians, things like that. And when you look at the mechanisms in detail, then they seem to be actually more related than apart, the underlying mechanisms, which results in being an expert in either perceptual motor or cognitive expertise. Okay, let's start with looking at cognitive expertise in a bit more detail. And one of the big people in that research is Adrian de Groot, or however he's pronounced. And he asked the question, how do experts think? And he was a chess master himself and did studies on people, on chess players, on grandmasters. So he asked, how do expert chess players think? How do they find good moves? And he used the following experimental technique. He created a certain chess problem to expert players, and then he asked them to think aloud how they solve that problem. And then they used verbal protocols. So he wrote that down and analyzed that afterwards. And that's still one of the major techniques to investigate expert cognitive performance. So how do they think? Super experts, grandmasters. And what he found is pretty much like ordinary experts. So he didn't compare that to novices who just learn to play chess, but to just normal good chess players who are experienced. And he compared that to grandmasters, world-leading experts. And he found that the strategies of these two groups are comparable. So for instance, both first inspect the chess position, then they would classify the position, oh, it's that type or something. Both anticipated the same number of moves. Often people think, oh, a chess expert thinks more ahead than other people, anticipates more moves than a regular expert, but it's not the case. However, they still found better solutions than normal experts. So how can that be? What's the difference? And one difference he found is the time it takes them to grasp the essence of a chess position. So grandmasters, often within seconds, they got the gist out of that, so to say. And within seconds, they often had a better representation and a better idea of the crucial elements of a position as ordinary experts had after 15 minutes. So they're much faster in a way. However, both suffer from the same cognitive limitations. Their short-term memory capacity is the same. It's not enlarged in experts. However, when they are faster, they have more time to think about solution finding, basically. The second thing is that they have a better knowledge base. So for instance, in chess, you often know particular arrangements from previous games, for instance, and you know, oh, that arrangement, and in that chess game in 1995 or so, the person won over the other one by doing these moves or something. This type of knowledge is better in grandmasters than in ordinary experts. And this has been shown by studies where people had to recall chess positions. Now, let's look at a recall task of meaningful chess positions. That means of positions which really arise during a game, which makes sense. And here, you see that grandmasters clearly outperform normal experts. However, as a critical control condition, you could make the recall task of random chess positions. That means you just take the black and white figures and place them randomly on the board, so that it's usually not a position which would arise from a proper game. And then grandmasters are not better than novices. So they must use some technique or strategy which is linked to actually game performance. It's not that they are generally better in remembering chess positions. The explanation comes from chunking theory by Miller, what we have seen. So what we have here is a meaningful chess position, and these experts have a very good knowledge base of these chunks in their long-term memory, like familiar patterns. This extensive experience with games, they will immediately recognize things. So this is one very familiar thing which even novices learn very quickly, where you protect your king by this particular move you can do here, for instance. But you may have a lot of other things where people see that, oh yeah, that's that arrangement. And that's then one chunk, one bit of information. So when you remember Miller, he said 7 plus minus 2 chunks of information. And when you can chunk virtually all figures, then you have a rather low memory load. So, in addition, it is proposed that in your long-term memory, you have attached the solutions, how to deal with these particular problems in your long-term memory. So you don't only remember this chunk, or let's say this one, but you immediately may recall strategies how to still get to the king when you have this arrangement. then there is an extension to that, to chunking theory, which is called template theory, that you can group these chunks in even larger units, more complex templates. That's based on template theory. But we don't need to go into detail here. Okay, yeah, and of course in random chess positions, this chunking does not work. So they're like normal people, and they can only remember the position of a couple of figures. So to summarize, on cognitive expertise, we've seen that one of the main techniques is to use this think aloud approach. And at least partly, the expertise is based on chunking, on a very profound knowledge base which people have and which they can employ and chunk together. And it's sometimes the same with memory experts. So if they can memorize long numbers, then often they may identify chunks in there or a system which they can use. Okay, let's go to perceptual-motor expertise, like playing a musical instrument. And let's go back to the example of tennis. And in a simple response task, which is as the following, a computer task. As soon as you see a visual on the screen, press a single button. No choice needed, nothing. Just as soon as there is something, press a button, as quickly as you can. What you will find is that participants almost never are faster than 200 milliseconds. That's usually the time you need from picking up the stimulus and making the motor response. As I said, in the tennis serve, due to the speed, we often have less than 500 milliseconds. And in this, when you consider the timing, you need 200 milliseconds to make a button press on just any stimulus. How can a player within 500 milliseconds determine the side, distance, and landing spot and execute a complex movement? How is that possible? And it has been shown that experts in this type of sports thing are better in actually predicting, anticipating these things. And this has been investigated with the so-called occlusion paradigm. So what you basically do is you create a video clip of a memory serve. So you film somebody. And then you stop the video clip at the point where the racket hits the ball. And then you ask novices, beginners, and experts to predict where's the ball going to land. And here you can see that the experts are much better. So they use a lot of information already before the ball actually moves by the body posture and things like that. And now you can try a couple of manipulations. You can stop the video earlier before it actually hits the ball. Or you can occlude parts of the video where the name comes from. So for instance, you only show the whole body, but you block the movement of the arm. You can't see the arm or the lower body or things like that. And what you can show is that novices are not very much affected by that. They predict with some accuracy, and if you block out some information, they still have roughly the same accuracy. That goes down a little bit. However, experts suffer quite a bit more. So they are quite good at prediction, but if you take away information, any further information, they lose drastically. So they use a lot of information to predict where the ball will go in this example of tennis. And this gives them a time advantage. So by the exact posture and movement, they can already anticipate and kind of pre-program where to run when the ball will come. So it gives them actually more time. And this prediction is the key to that. why they are able to do this task, which seems undoable. Now, I would like to finish today's session with the question of how do you become an expert? And there is basically only one key solution, and that is that you have to practice and practice and practice and practice. And if you think you had enough practice, then you have to go on and practice and practice and practice and practice. However, from your everyday life, you may know that there are a lot of people who perform or practice an activity quite a lot, but nevertheless become a real expert. So maybe like in computer gaming, some people play a lot of computer games, or playing golf, and you may spend a lot of time on the golf course, but still you are far, far away from a pro. So it has been shown that actually the type of practice matters. So just mere performance of an activity does not make you an expert. And it has been suggested that only something which is called deliberate practice makes you an expert. Okay, so what is deliberate practice? And that's actually something where you would say, yeah, that's where professional sportsmen have their personal trainers and work all the time. It is highly structured and has the main aim of eliminating the weaknesses. So it needs to be at the appropriate level of difficulty, so that you practice really at your level. It is closely monitored by your trainer, so you get constant feedback. And usually, because of this strict regime, it's not very enjoyable to most people. So, you know, it's like being on the tennis court and you practice your backhand, and again, no, do a slightly different angle, next ball, again, no, slightly different, do it like that, step wrong, shoulders wrong, and you go on like that for hours, for days, and always fine-tune like that. That's deliberate practice. And it surely predicts at least part of the difference between expert and novices. And basically all researchers agree that it is necessary and inevitable to follow, to use deliberate practice to become an expert. So there's no way around that. However, where there is a debate is whether deliberate practice is sufficient or not to become an expert. Some say yes. So everybody can become an expert in anything just by enough deliberate practice. Of course, you still may not win a world record if you are physically not in that thing. So, for instance, in swimmers also, your body shape, if you're not tall enough, then you may not be fast enough, or in running or something like that. So body size may make a difference, or in basketball, for instance. And some say no. Besides deliberate practice, you need talent. And talent is something which is considered to be inborn and can't be changed. So it's a bit the nature versus nurture controversy, like in intelligence. How much is acquired through education, parents, and how much is inborn? And studies are very difficult to really differentiate between these two options, and you usually have to do twin studies and things like that, which is difficult enough in intelligence research. But how many twins do you have who are tennis professionals, for instance? It's not that many around. Okay, to summarize our chapter on expertise, expertise is a skill or knowledge in a particular area. And we have seen that we have cognitive expertise, which is mainly based on previous knowledge, and then this can be used for chunking. And we have seen the example of perceptual-motor expertise, which is also based on previous knowledge, like knowledge of movement, in perception and anticipation of the opponent's movement, and automaticity of actions. And the importance of deliberate practice, where we really need this training regimes to become an expert. Okay, any questions on expertise? Okay, then we see us next week on the topics of creativity and emotions. Okay, thanks for coming. Hi, just 1 second, okay? Just stop that.